welcome everybody. It's lovely to have you all here. So a very, very warm welcome. If you don't know who I am, my name's Pauline. I'm the Chief Executive and Registrar of the General Teaching Council. And I think this is probably our first ever virtual event where we have focused exclusively on college lecturers and the professional standards for college lecturers. So we really appreciate you marking out the time in your diaries today. We were just, we've all had to race to get here at 4 o'clock, and I'm sure that that's nothing compared to what you've had to do to get here to be with us this afternoon. So thanks for being here, greatly appreciated. I'm going to in a moment introduce you to Lou, but I'm just going to set the scene a little bit because I wanted to just outline why we're here talking about professional standards. And it's largely connected to what we are about at the General Teaching Council for Scotland, the very reason for us to be here. So we've been around, most of you will know probably, for quite a bit of time, since 1965. We have work that is set out in law that says what we should do, and ultimately it's about helping improve the quality of learning and teaching, but also maintaining and improving teaching standards. So teachers wanted to have us. They wanted a body that looked after the professional status of teachers through professional standards. We've registered teachers of school education for a long time, and our register of teachers is now at around about 82, almost 82,000 individuals, and it's changed a lot in the last decade. And it's changed because we welcomed teachers from independent schools in 2017. And then for the last few years, we've been working with colleagues to welcome college lecturers onto the register of teachers in the category of teacher of further education. And we work a lot with a group that we lovingly call PLORG. It's got very odd initials, the College Lecturer Registration Working Group, of which Christine, who I see, Christine Calder's a member here. And it involves a partnership group, and we've been working together to make registration happen, because the compulsion, the reason for college lecturers to register is a bit different to that of school teachers. So it's not written in a piece of law, it's a employment condition of terms and conditions of employment, really. So professional standards are at the heart of what we're about. We launched our latest strategic plan around about this time last year. It's called Trusted Teaching, where the focus of our work very much over the next few years is to really expertly deliver registration and regulation, our core functions, and speak up for high standards in the profession. It's our role to do that, and professional standards are really deeply embedded in everything that we do. We recognise, though, I think that trusted teaching probably means different things to different people. For our communities, they place a high degree of trust in teachers, and it's about relying on teachers and lecturers to interpret what's right and wrong, keep learners safe, and be positive role models. And today we're focusing very much on the professional standards for lecturers in Scotland's colleges, which were transferred to General Teaching Council in 2019 from the Scottish Government. We also have another standard that was approved last year that provides a route for provisional registration for college lecturers who are not quite in a space to have a qualification at this moment in time. And the professional standards, along with the Code of Professionalism and Conduct, set out what the professionalism of lecturers is and are. So professionalism is deeply rooted in our values, our beliefs, and our dispositions, which is why we are delighted to welcome Dr Lou Mycroft to join us this afternoon, because we're focusing on professional standards through values. And the event's entitled Freedom Needs Boundaries, Using the Professional Standards for Lecturers in Scotland's Colleges in Practice. And Lou has one of the most exciting biographies I have ever had the pleasure of reading out aloud. So this is good, right? Lou is a further education changemaker and social entrepreneur. And Lou, I think you've worked with lots of different policymakers and change leads across further education to enact new ways of thinking and being, using values and coming from a place of values. And Lou's co-director of the social enterprises FE Constellations and Thinking Cultures, as well as a co-founder of the Joy FE Collective, which sounds like we should all become members of that collective. It sounds excellent. And I think you're also currently facilitating the Green Changemakers programme for West Midlands Combined Authority. So Lou's going to talk about the values line, which is a way of developing long-term sustainable change in a short-term world, discussing the themes like using the professional standards for active inquiry in the college teaching context, and using the professional values intentionally in day-to-day practice, collaboratively connecting and thinking with others. After Lou's spoken, we're going to have a bit of time, hopefully at the end, for a couple of questions. Thanks to those of you who've submitted those. And with no further ado, Lou, I'm going to hand over to you. You're very welcome. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Pauline. I am so happy to be here, so thrilled to be asked. And whenever I get the chance to do a really brilliant piece of work like this, I get so much out of it because it provides a wonderful pause point to stop and think, what is it that I'm doing? What is it that, we are doing together and trying to achieve together? So I've really enjoyed preparing for it. I'm just going to share a few slides. There aren't loads, so just bear with me a moment. And while I'm doing that, please feel free to come and find me on social media, on LinkedIn in particular. You can find me under Lou Mycroft wherever, and do check out #JoyFE and join the JoyFE movement. It would be wonderful to get JoyFE spreading its rhizomatic tentacles into Scotland as well. So thanks to everybody who's turned up today at 4 o'clock on what's certainly a rainy Wednesday afternoon here in Yorkshire. Hopefully this is going to be something which is thought-provoking and hopefully entertaining, and a little bit of something that I'm going to ask you to do as well, which might help you be able to take the work out and apply it. I'll start by introducing myself a little more, though Pauline's introduction was wonderful, but I also want to, I think, establish credibility around the professional standards. And, I'm always so proud to say that I also was an FE lecturer for 20 years. I worked at Northern College for Adults in Yorkshire, here in England. And latterly, I was a teacher educator, and those teachers were all FE lecturers themselves, but also community workers, youth workers, nurse trainers, and other social purpose educators. We worked from the values out. And since leaving there 8 years ago, I've worked in professional development in further education, as Pauline said, and I've been involved in 2 rounds of developing professional standards here in England. I work closely with the Education and Training Foundation, who have the contract from the Department of Education for post-qualification training. I work with individual colleges, and Pauline's mentioned the Green Changemakers programme. I think that's the best work I've ever had the privilege to be involved in, to be honest. Everything is about values-driven practice, values-driven leadership. And I promised myself when I went freelance that I'd stick to that, and I have. So when we talk about professional standards, it's always in terms of what they are, but why do we have them? There are reasons why they're established, but how are they useful to us as individual humans? That's really important. What they are, as long as they are values-based and sensible, is almost less important. We have professional standards as a framework for clarity. That's where they are most useful. And to be clear is to be kind. The professional standards for lecturers in Scotland, they're a lovely bit of kit, and they walk that fine line between being clear and then not telling you how to teach. And they are worth getting to know. I'm sure many of you already do. The danger with any set of standards is that they will quickly become a tick box. Certainly I've seen in some colleges how the standards are used in England, quite instrumentally in some ways, quite sort of formulaic. And so that's why what I've done with the standards that you work to is I have drawn all of the values words out of them, and that's what we're going to work with today. The standards provide a boundary which allows us within that boundary to be creative in our work and to be brave, I think, as well. I draw a lot on Brené Brown's research in my teaching. She's there on the right. I'm sure some people, I know Christine, and I'm sure some people know Brené Brown's fabulous work, research-based work. And she defines a boundary as knowing what's okay and what's not okay. I mean, can't be clearer than that. I also love the work of another influential thinker, Prentice Hemphill, and she defines boundaries as a place where I can care for you and also care for myself. And I think that's got huge meaning for our overwhelming and busy lives as educators. The professional standards we work within frame our work in an everyday sense, not a ticky box sense, because what we want is to live good values, not just laminate them and stick them on a wall. The organizational psychologist Adam Grant writes that values are a steady compass. They point you towards a future purpose. Passion brings immediate joy, and we have many of those moments in teaching, don't we? Values provide lasting meaning. And here's the first hint that the values line is that strong golden thread that allows us to continue doing long-term thinking in what is such a short-term world. The quality cycle, by its very definition, the academic year, by its very definition, is short-termist. Now we do this, and as soon as we've done that, we've hardly time to think about it, and we're on to the next thing. There's never a time of the year that is not busy. So values as that long-term bridge between the joyful moments and the challenging ones. And they're also about accountability in a really meaningful sense. So I've been working a lot with that word accountable recently. I don't know about here in Scotland, but in England, the word accountability is used as a synonym for being compliant, and it's two very different things. When we are absolutely compliant, we never find ways of doing things differently. Our times, our world's times, mean that change is inevitable and crises occur regularly. We need to be adaptable. Our services are at breaking point, and in many ways, so is the health of our people, including ourselves. To be personally accountable is a professional attribute we should be talking more about, because it includes not only the meaningful and necessary compliance, of which there is much, of course, but also a commitment to calling out what's not right or what's not working. Another influence on me is Nancy Klein, whose thinking environment work I use all the time in my practice. I have done for 30 years. It's a set of processes that provide another frame for my work in that they enable people to think independently together. In fact, Nancy Klein coined the paradox, freedom needs boundaries, the title of this session. And Nancy writes that one definition of insanity is the decision to keep doing something that is not working, to do it in the same way, and to expect different results. One definition of sanity, then, is to notice what is not working, change the way you're doing it, and get different results. One definition of insanity, if we follow that line of reasoning, is to do what works, because that's what we've always done. But what we've always done is not necessarily always going to work in changing, adaptable, crisis-ridden times. In my leadership work, I've come to recognize that we spend too much time bouncing the ball up the road. Our hierarchies are so structured that we become quite infantilized within them at every level. That goes for senior leaders too, who often have as little time to think about doing things differently as we lecturers do. We're all trapped in structures we can't change, within systems that feel unchangeable, even as they get burdened with more and more bureaucracy. And we're all chasing that dream of strategic alignment, where everything flows from the values and purpose of the organization, where everyone knows what their role is, not just what their job is, and where processes are smooth and don't get under our feet. So what's the answer? Well, I believe that it's in refocusing on what is fundamentally important that we will be able to live the values in those professional standards, live the standards in our work. They might not be our chosen personal values, but as individuals, we have to find common ground with them, or we'll be unhappy in our work every day. The values of the professional standards for lecturers in Scotland's colleges are captured in this word cloud. There's some around the edges that didn't quite get in. I've extracted them from the document. It's all really good stuff, and I'm just going to read out the whole list now. Collegiate, social justice, fairness, respect, well-being, equality, diversity, inclusiveness, trust, innovative, empowering, personal responsibility, or personally responsible, I should say, sustainability, sustainable, reflective, participatory, informed, engaged, critical, accountable. I think we've had that twice. Thinking, listening, community, inquiring, creative. They are lovely words. And they are powerful, powerful meanings. When you do values-driven work, it's actually really hard to argue with. It's a great foundation, a great rationale. And these words that are written all the way through your standards are the way into them. Nobody's ever going to ask you, what is standard 3.2? Tell us off the top of your head. But they might ask you, and you might want to talk about the values that are most important to you within these standards, and the standards themselves will help you enact them. There might be other values that you might personally add, but they're all sound, these values, and they're possible to work with. Organizational values should and probably do flow out of these. The question is then, how do we bake them into every process, every work stream, every decision, every planning activity, so that, as I said at the top, they are lived every day, not just laminated on lanyards and on the walls? So I think that the answer to this is developing a values line. And this is how I've been working with colleges for some years now, including the Green Changemakers project. And we've been seeing a real impact of it for some time in colleges who have moved from the good intentions of the training that we do together to actual long-term sustainable change. Like anything else, it's an approach that only works if you do it with meaning. This is not just about chasing that top drawer inspection report, though of course that's important. The Scottish inspection framework and the ESTIM framework in Wales are much kinder actually than the English framework, which has single word judgments. And paradoxically in England, we're all expected to aim for outstanding to get to the point where outstanding no longer means to stand out. The values line is about so much more than that. It's about what we do every day. And if we are clear about our purpose and work to those values every day, what we'll do is the best that we can, which is all anybody can ever do, which is all we ever ask of our students, isn't it? So we all know about the KPI line here on the right, even if it's so hidden in plain sight that we don't see it. Key performance indicators are what we all work to, even when we're not necessarily aware of that. And it's right, of course, and proper that we account for public money in this way. League tables, student outcomes, staff wellbeing measures. I once saw a poster on the wall of the Department for Education in London, which said, "What's measured is all that matters." Our compliance frameworks are built around this assumption, and we have to account for them. They are what hold our structures in place. But we don't have to labour it. We don't have to over-bureaucratise it. We don't have to overthink it. We don't have to spend as much energy on the KPI line as much as we do. In England, everything is about the self-assessment report for inspection, with everybody contributing to the quality improvement plans which feed it. So much of our work, rather than being celebrated widely, falls on the cutting room floor because you can only get a certain amount in that. No, we don't need this story. We don't need this example. We don't need this quote from a student. We don't need this artifact. We don't need this memory, because we've lost sight of what really matters, because we come to assume, like a sort of collective consciousness, that all that matters is what goes into the formal compliance, the KPI line. Of course, we need to keep it on track. But what if we had a visible and equally visible, perhaps even more visible, values line running alongside it? And what if we conserved energy for working that values line by doing only what we need to do on the KPI line, streamline the processes, dial down the emphasis, make it accurate and timely, but not the be all and end all? We make a fetish out of the KPI line. It eats up our energy because, after all, every business knows these days that we have a triple bottom line: people and planet, as well as prosperity, which we need to balance. And we just don't pay enough attention to the people and planet part. How to do it, right, or how to at least make a start, because this is complex, isn't it? But how to make a start is actually really simple. It takes precision and will, just like everything else that matters in life. So, we don't celebrate our loved ones' birthdays on the wrong day just for the sake of it. When it matters, we get it right. So the question I have for you today is this: what could education look like with the values that matter to us baked in? Those values, those professional standards values, what could it look like if they were baked in? And we can't do that baking in without having a process for it, asking the right questions. And these are what I call values line questions. So, emerging out of my work with the thinking environment and tested with colleges over the past near decade, I've got a question formula that I'm going to ask you to practice today. I'm suggesting that when we sit down to do any planning, make any decisions, formulate any process, we begin with values line questions in this format. What could, insert your work stream, the thing that you're thinking about, curriculum planning, induction, interviews, assessment, what could insert work stream look like as a practice of, and then drop in the values word: participation, diversity, social justice, collegiality, fairness. We've got the values there for us, drawn from the professional standards word cloud. So here are some examples. What could curriculum planning look like as a practice of diversity? What could enrichment look like as a practice of social justice? What could professional development look like as a practice of collaboration? And I've got like streams of them. I keep them all like amazing questions. Imagine if this was always our starting point. Imagine where our thinking could go, how we could think differently about the stuff we take for granted in how we structure our work. Process matters too, of course. If we generate questions, we have to find ways to think about them and listen to the answers. We don't always make time for that. Our meetings are often very busy, noisy. People dominate, people take their voices away. We're not always brilliant at hearing all the voices, which is why I work consistently in a thinking environment. And that's maybe for another time, but there's a great thinking environment workbook I can ask Vicky to send out to you all. What I'd like you to do here and now is construct a question relevant to your work using this framework and put it on this Mentimeter here. And I'll share what's coming up with you all once you get going. So just on your phone or in a browser, just tap in. Oh, hold on a sec. I need to go on to the next slide. Tap in www.menti.com. Put in that code, or you can use the QR code if you prefer, and then just answer the question. Have a go at a values line question in that format. And please don't deviate from the formula. We've tested it and it works. So that could is important. For example, it's a modal verb that brings possibility. The comma matters. what could curriculum planning, comma, look like as a practice of diversity, because it ensures emphasis on each clause. And be careful not to, don't expand it. Don't accidentally write in the answer. We do that more often than we might think. The point is to open up thinking differently rather than fill a gap with what we already think we know. So while you're doing that, I'm going to flick onto the actual Mentimeter. Yeah, and it's working. Vicky, can you give me a thumbs up, or Pauline? Does that now appear on the Mentimeter screen? Or do I need to unshare and reshare?
I've just put my own question in there, Lou, and I don't know how I see if I can see it. Oh, hold on. It's thinking about it.
We can just see at the moment, Lou, just the Menti screen, the slide.
Yeah.
The QR code.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and then go on to the correct screen, the Mentimeter screen, and share again. Thank you. So this should be coming up with your questions now. Can you see them? Oh, fabulous. I'm just going to talk through some while more people contribute, and we'll just spend a few minutes with these before we come to the end of the talk. So what could induction look like as a practice of diversity? Beautiful. What could lecturer qualifications look like as a practice of sustainability? I love that. And I love the use of the word sustainability there. What could increasing attainment look like as a practice of equality? You've totally got it. What could recruitment look like as a practice of social justice? What could professional development look like as a practice of diversity? What could assessments look like as a practice of inclusion? This is brilliant. What could curriculum planning look like as a practice of empowerment? And what could assessment look like as a practice of empowerment? What could curriculum planning look like as a practice of enquiring? Oh, that's beautiful. What could student retention look like as a practice of well-being? What could CPD look like as a practice of enquiring? It's like a poem, isn't it? It's beautiful. And obviously I'll share these back with you. What could attendance look like as a practice of inclusion? I would say, what could participatory learning look like as a practice of equality? Yeah. What could assessment look like as a practice of fairness? What could professional development look like as a practice of empowerment? What could digital look like as a practice of sustainability? What could recruitment look like as a practice of social justice? I think that one's popular. What could interviews look like as a practice of equality? What could student guidance and support time look like as a practice of empowerment? What could assessment look like as a practice of sustainability? What could curriculum creation look like as a practice of creativity? What could professional standards look like as a practice of collaboration? What could my student feedback look like as a practice of reflective learning? Oh, what could portfolios look like as a practice of fairness? What could professional development look like as a practice of collaboration? What could interviews look like as a practice of equality? What could assessment look like as a practice of well-being? What could attainment look like as a practice of accountability? And I might have said this one, but it's worth saying again. What could assessment look like as a practice of inclusion? I mean, feel free to keep them coming, but aren't they beautiful? Imagine, right? If I was working with you and your team and we got some time together, I would get us together in a thinking environment and I would ask whichever question was most pertinent. What could professional standards look like as a practice of collaboration? And then we would just go around everybody without interruption and just hear the thoughts and ideas that came out. Because a question, oh, lovely, Sean, I can see you nodding. And you know, when you're speaking and you get that back from people, that's so wonderful. The question, we know it. We know that it opens up the brain, like the brain wakes up. We know that from neuroscience. And these questions are so simple. They're not out to catch anybody out or fox anybody, are they? And when you know, you could do like, I mean, what we tend to do is We generate loads of questions and then we do like a sort of omni-vote on them. Everybody gets like 3 dots to vote for, you know, the one they want to work on the most. And then at that point, we do sort of a thinking round about it. But then what you've got in your back pocket are those professional standards. They will help you. But if you try and read that whole document, you'd be like, oh, God. And that's when it starts to feel like a tick box. But if you go into that thinking, I want to know, you know, what inclusion, what my feedback, my student feedback is going to look like as a practice of, I think it was it inclusion? It doesn't matter, you know, whatever the value was, you'll find that the standards will help you and back you up. Where colleges have really taken this on board, we have seen such change. We've seen that strategic alignment really flowing through. The questions are not just asked at the top, you know, the autonomy is there for the questions to be asked where they need to be asked. We've seen cultures change because it's that inquiringness, that curiosity, isn't it? That being asked for what you think about a really simple question, and then the answer is listened to. And then we've also seen systems change, because once people are working in this way, you then start to notice, not like, oh, it's all their fault, or the managers need to sort this out, or that team's a nightmare, because we all have some of that in our colleges, don't we? I was talking to Tom, who's a director of finance at the college I'm governor at, earlier today, and he said, you know, when they started doing this work, everybody, well, he's come from industry for one thing. He was an accountant at a football club, and he loves working in FE, but he was shocked at the silos in FE when he first came in. Coming from industry, that was the thing that was most noticeable. And those silos would just be blaming the other. Well, we're all together in the presence of these questions, and it gets beyond that. And then we can start to say, okay, so actually, we've imagined what student feedback could look like as a practice of, you know, fairness or kindness or whatever. But actually, we've got a process here that's getting in the way of that, because we've got a form to fill in that, and actually the language is a bit cold, you know? So let's change this. Let's make these tiny changes that come out of the discussions around those questions. I'm going back now to the slides. And we will just finish off. I love your questions. They're just wonderful. So, and I did, Vicky, I said, you know, didn't have that. There's always a last minute change, an extra slide on the end, something in the wrong order. So I'm sorry about this. I hope that this just really simple thing has given you a technique to use when you've got the opportunity with your team, maybe just with a colleague, you know, generate a few questions, choose one. Give yourselves just 10 minutes. You can do a lot in 10 minutes in a dialogue. A thinking environment dialogue would mean, say, Christine, you and I were thinking together, and I know you know about this. I would ask the values line question. We'd set the clock for 10 minutes, and you would just think aloud, and I wouldn't interrupt you. I'd just listen. And then when you run out of steam, you'd say, what do you think, Lou? And we would go backwards and forwards. 10 minutes, even in our busy lives, is not a huge amount of time to get the thinking going. When it comes to implementing them on a bigger scale, wedging them into those agendas that are tightly packed, you'll have to be brave, because the gravitational pull of doing what we've always done is strong. But I don't think any of us thinks that sticking fast to what we've always done is going to work for anybody in this, you know, changing and adaptable world. I'm going to finish with this photograph. And this is my favourite companion species. So this is the blue satin bowerbird from Australia. And in mating season, he builds this gorgeous bower here, not to live in, it's hopeless for that, but to attract a mate. And he decorates it with blue shiny things, so you can just see them there. It's human detritus, really, that he finds on the forest floor. But for us, if we're only ever feeding that KPI line, and I've just imagined it like Audrey 2, the plant in Little Shop of Horrors, if we're only ever feeding that, those joyful moments of our practice, those blue shiny things, just end up on the forest floor. And they're the things that keep us teaching, aren't they? They're the things that we wanted to experience when we came into this profession, and that keep us energized and joyful, even when it sometimes feels like the bureaucracy of it is overwhelming. They're the things we lose hold of when we come to write the evidence for the KPIs, that they are the artifacts of your values. Might look like a bottle top, but that bottle top is soaked full of the values enshrined in your work and in the professional standards which you can come to know and which you can bake into the organisation and everything that you do.